My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I can still hear the exact tone of his voice when he said it. Not angry, not even loud, just calm and certain, like he was ordering coffee. Delete all your male friends or we're done. We were sitting in his car outside my apartment in Portland, rain tapping against the windshield, the kind of soft, steady rain that makes everything feel surreal. I remember staring at the drops sliding down the glass, thinking how strange it was that your entire life could change in the space between one breath and the next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Michael had his phone out, scrolling through my Instagram followers with the kind of focus people usually reserve for job interviews or medical test results. His jaw was tight, that muscle near his ear twitching the way it always did when he was building up to something. I should have seen it coming. But love, real love, or what I thought was real love, has this terrible way of making you blind to the person sitting right next to you. He stopped scrolling and turned the screen toward me. This guy Jake, you went to college with him, right? I nodded slowly. Yeah, we were in the same marketing program. We studied together sometimes. Michael's eyes narrowed. Studied together. Right. And this one, Chris, who's he? My stomach started to knot. He works at the coffee shop I go to. We just talk sometimes while I wait for my order. The air in the car felt thicker suddenly, pressing against my chest. Michael set his phone down deliberately on the center console. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I love you. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. But I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here wondering if you're texting these guys, wondering what you're talking about, wondering if you're comparing me to them. I reached for his hand, but he pulled it back. Michael, they're just friends. You know that. I've never given you any reason to think otherwise. He laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound people make when they're trying not to scream. That's what every girl says right before she cheats. I've been cheated on before, Sarah. I told you that. I won't go through it again. The rain kept falling. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm started blaring, then stopped. I thought about all the times Michael had told me about his ex-girlfriend, Emma, how she destroyed his ability to trust, how she'd lied and manipulated and left him broken. I'd held him through those stories, promised him I was different, promised him he was safe with me. And now here we were, with him asking me to prove it by erasing half my life. So what are you saying? I asked quietly. He looked at me, and for a second I saw something vulnerable flash across his face, something desperate and afraid. Then it hardened again. I'm saying choose. Them or me. Delete every single guy from your phone, your social media, all of it. Or we're done right now. I sat there, rain drumming overhead, feeling the weight of 2 years together pressing down on my shoulders. 2 years of inside jokes and late-night conversations and plans for a future that suddenly felt like it was crumbling. And I heard myself say, in a voice that didn't quite sound like mine, okay. Done. Michael's face changed instantly. The tension in his shoulders melted away. He smiled, actually smiled, like I'd just agreed to marry him instead of agreeing to delete dozens of people who'd been part of my life for years. Really? You mean it? I nodded, pulling out my phone with hands that felt strangely steady. Yeah. I mean it. He watched as I opened Instagram first. Jake's profile came up, the guy who'd helped me pass statistics when I was on the verge of failing, who'd sent me funny memes when I was stressed about exams. I hit the unfollow button. Then I blocked him. Michael leaned over to watch, his breath warm against my neck. Good. Who's next? I scrolled to Chris, the barista who always remembered I liked oat milk and who'd recommended the book that became my favorite last year. Block. Delete. Gone. One by one, I went through my followers. Danny from high school. Mark from my old job. Tyler who I'd volunteered with at the animal shelter. Every single man who wasn't related to me by blood disappeared with a tap of my finger. Michael watched the whole thing, nodding approvingly with each deletion. "What about your phone contacts?" he asked. I switched to my contacts list. The deletions continued. 37 names total. 37 people reduced to nothing because the man I loved couldn't trust me with their existence. When I finished, I held up my phone to show him. Done. They're all gone. He pulled me into a hug, kissing the top of my head. "Thank you, baby. You have no idea how much better this makes me feel. This is what real love looks like. Sacrifice. Putting us first." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I hugged him back, my cheek pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow down to normal. And that's when I realized something. My finger was still hovering over my phone screen. Because I wasn't quite finished deleting yet. There was still one more name I needed to remove. But I didn't tell him that. Not yet. I just smiled against his shirt and whispered, "Yeah. Sacrifice." I lived with that decision for exactly 3 days before the real rules started appearing. Michael came over to my apartment on Wednesday evening with takeout from that Thai place we both liked, the one on Hawthorne Street where the owner always gave us extra spring rolls. He set the bags down on my kitchen counter and kissed me hello, then pulled out his phone. "So I was thinking," he said casually, spooning pad thai onto 2 plates, "maybe you should give me your Instagram password. Just so I can check in sometimes, make sure no one's trying to slide into your DMs or anything." I froze with a fork halfway to my mouth. "You want my password?" He looked up, eyebrows raised like I just said something ridiculous. "Sarah, after everything we just went through, you're really going to make this weird?" "I just want to protect you. There are creeps everywhere online." The pad thai suddenly tasted like cardboard. But I unlocked my phone and handed it to him, watched him type my password into his notes app, watched him smile, that relieved smile that I was starting to recognize as the smile that came after I gave up another piece of myself. "Thank you for understanding," he said, and we ate dinner while he scrolled through my messages, occasionally asking who someone was, why they'd sent me a particular emoji, what I'd meant when I'd replied with, "Haha, sounds good," to a coworker's invitation to a team lunch. By Friday, he'd decided that Instagram wasn't enough. He needed my Facebook password too. Then Twitter. Then my email, because what if old guy friends tried reaching out there? I gave him everything. Each password felt like a small death, but I told myself it was temporary, that once he felt secure enough, once he really trusted me, things would go back to normal. Normal never came back. Instead, Michael started showing up at my workplace unannounced. I worked as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm downtown, the kind of open office space with exposed brick and too many plants. He'd appear in the lobby with coffee, smiling, saying he just wanted to surprise me. But his eyes would scan the office, counting how many men worked there, watching how I interacted with them. My coworker David made the mistake of complimenting my work on a client presentation. Just a simple, "Great job on the Peterson account, Sarah." Michael was there that day. I saw his face change, saw something dark and cold move behind his eyes. That night, he asked me if David had a girlfriend. If I'd ever been alone with David. If I found David attractive. I said no to everything, but it didn't matter. The next week, I started eating lunch at my desk instead of in the break room where David usually ate. I started leaving work exactly at 5, no staying late even when deadlines loomed, because Michael would be waiting outside in his car, and if I was even 5 minutes late, the texts would start. "Where are you? Who are you with? Why aren't you answering?" My best friend Lisa noticed first. We'd been friends since middle school, the kind of friendship that survives everything, distance and bad boyfriends and life changes. She called me on a Sunday afternoon, her voice bright and familiar. "Hey stranger, want to grab brunch? I feel like I haven't seen you in forever." I was at Michael's apartment, folded into his couch while he played video games with his headset on. "I can't today. Michael and I have plans." There was a pause. Sarah, you've said that the last 4 times I've asked. Are you okay? Michael glanced over at me, even though he couldn't possibly hear Lisa's voice through my phone. Yeah, I'm fine. Just been busy. Another pause, longer this time. Busy or isolated? The word hit me like cold water. What's that supposed to mean? Lisa sighed. It means I miss my friend. It means you used to have a life outside of Michael, and now I can't remember the last time we hung out without him there. It means your mom called me last week asking if you were okay because you barely answer her calls anymore. I turned away from Michael, lowering my voice. I'm just prioritizing my relationship. That's what you're supposed to do when you're serious about someone. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that would echo in my head for weeks afterward. Sarah, prioritizing someone shouldn't feel like disappearing. We hung up shortly after that. Michael finished his game and pulled off his headset, looking at me with that expression I'd come to dread, the one that meant he'd been listening to my side of the conversation the entire time. What did Lisa want? I forced a smile. Just to catch up. Nothing important. He nodded slowly, then pulled me into his lap, wrapping his arms around me in what anyone else would think was an embrace. But I could feel the tension in his muscles, could feel the way his fingers pressed just a little too hard into my sides. You know, Lisa never really liked me, he said softly, his lips against my ear. She's probably jealous that you're happy. Real friends would be happy for you. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, feeling his heartbeat against my back, wondering when the walls of his apartment had started feeling less like home and more like a cage I'd walked into willingly. That night, lying next to him while he slept, I opened my phone and stared at my contact list. So many names missing now. Jake, Chris, Danny, Mark, Tyler. All the people I'd deleted because Michael asked me to. And I realized that Lisa was right. I was disappearing. Piece by piece, person by person, I was erasing myself to make room for his insecurity. But what terrified me most wasn't that I was disappearing. It was that part of me had stopped caring. Part of me had started to believe that maybe he was right. Maybe this was what love looked like. Maybe sacrifice was supposed to hurt this much. I looked at Michael sleeping beside me, his face peaceful and innocent in the darkness. And I wondered which one of us was really the prisoner here. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in March, unremarkable in every way except for what it took from me. I was at Stumptown Coffee on Division Street, the place I used to go every morning before work, back when my routine was my own. I'd stopped going after Michael said it was unnecessary, that I could just make coffee at home, that I didn't need to waste money when we were supposed to be saving for our future. But that morning I'd woken up with a headache that felt like my skull was cracking open, and I needed caffeine that wasn't from our apartment. I needed to breathe air that didn't smell like his cologne. I was standing in line when I heard my name. Sarah? Sarah Mitchell? I turned and saw Ryan Torres, someone I hadn't thought about in years. We'd worked together at my first job out of college, a miserable startup that crashed and burned within 18 months. Ryan had been one of the few good things about that place, always ready with a joke when the CEO was having another meltdown. Oh my God, Ryan. I smiled, and it felt strange on my face, like my muscles had forgotten how to do it genuinely. How are you? We talked for maybe 5 minutes. He'd gotten married, moved to Seattle, was just in Portland visiting his parents. He showed me a photo of his wife, a beautiful woman with kind eyes. We laughed about our old boss, about the time the office flooded and we'd all had to work from a Denny's for 3 days. It was light, easy, the kind of conversation that reminds you that the world is bigger than the 4 walls you've been living in. Then my phone buzzed. Then again. Then it started ringing. Michael's name flashed across the screen. I excused myself and answered. Hey, I'm just grabbing coffee, I'll call you back in a minute. His voice came through tight and controlled. Who are you with? My stomach dropped. What? I'm not with anyone, I'm just in line at a coffee shop. There was a pause, and I could hear him breathing, could picture exactly what his face looked like right now. Don't lie to me, Sarah. I can see your location. You've been standing in the same spot for 7 minutes. You don't stand in a coffee line for 7 minutes. My hand started shaking. I'd forgotten about the location sharing app he'd asked me to download last month. Asked, like it was optional, like I had a choice. I ran into an old coworker. We were just catching up. Another pause, longer this time. Old coworker. Guy or girl? I glanced back at Ryan, who was now at the counter ordering. Guy, but Michael, it's not like that, he hung up. The dial tone felt like a slap. I ordered my coffee in a daze and left without saying goodbye to Ryan. When I got to my car, there were already 6 texts waiting. You're doing this again. After everything I've done for you. After all the trust I've put in you. I can't believe you disrespect me like this. We need to talk. Now. Come to my apartment. We're settling this. I drove to his place with my coffee going cold in the cup holder, my headache now a full-blown migraine. Michael was waiting at the door when I arrived, arms crossed, face carved from stone. He didn't let me speak. The moment I walked in, he started. 7 minutes, Sarah. You talked to some random guy for 7 minutes. Do you know how that makes me look? Do you know how that makes me feel? I tried to explain. Tried to tell him it was innocent, that Ryan was married, that it was literally just a chance encounter in a coffee shop. But Michael wasn't listening. He was pacing his living room, hands running through his hair, building himself up into something I didn't recognize. You deleted all those guys from your phone, he said, voice rising. You promised me. You said you understood. And the first chance you get, you're chatting up some dude in public where anyone could see you. Tears started burning in my eyes. I wasn't chatting him up. We were just being friendly. Normal people are allowed to have conversations. He stopped pacing and looked at me with something that made my blood run cold. Normal people. So now I'm not normal. Now I'm the crazy one for caring about my relationship. I shook my head, feeling the walls closing in. That's not what I meant. Michael came closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. You know what I think? I think you liked the attention. I think you miss having all these guys fawning over you. I think you like making me look like an idiot. Something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic way, not with fireworks or revelation, just a quiet internal break, like a bone fracturing under too much pressure. And in that moment, standing in his apartment with tears running down my face while he accused me of crimes I hadn't committed, I realized something. I realized that I'd been so busy trying to prove I wasn't the girl his ex had been, trying to prove I was trustworthy and loyal and devoted, that I'd forgotten to ask myself one simple question. Did I even want to be here anymore? But I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I heard myself say, I'm sorry. You're right. I should have walked away the second I saw him. Michael's face softened immediately. He pulled me into a hug, stroking my hair like I was a child who'd finally learned her lesson. That's my girl. See, this is why I love you. You get it. You understand that relationships take work. I stood there in his arms, smelling his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my ear. And I felt absolutely nothing. No love, no anger, no fear. Just a vast, empty space where my emotions used to live. That night, I went home to my apartment and stood in front of my bathroom mirror for 20 minutes, studying my own face like it belonged to a stranger. My eyes looked hollow. My skin looked gray. I looked like a photograph of myself that had been left in the sun too long, all the color faded out. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. Lisa's name was still there. My mom's name. My sister's name. But I couldn't remember the last time I'd called any of them without Michael listening, without having to explain later who I'd talked to and what we discussed and why it had taken so long. I was still there, technically. Still alive, still breathing, still going through the motions. But Lisa had been right. I was disappearing. And the scariest part was that I'd been helping it happen, deleting myself one compromise at a time. I looked back at my reflection and whispered to the hollow-eyed woman staring back at me. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. She never did anymore. The intervention happened 3 weeks later, and I never saw it coming. I got home from work on a Friday evening, exhausted from a week of deadlines and Michael's constant check-ins. I'd texted him 17 times that day, updating him on where I was, who I was talking to, what I was doing. It had become automatic, like breathing. I opened my apartment door and froze. My living room was full of people. Lisa sat on my couch, her face grave. My older sister Amanda stood by the window, arms crossed. My mom was in my kitchen making tea, because that's what she did when things were serious, she made tea. And in my armchair sat my dad, who I hadn't seen in 2 months because Michael always had something planned when my parents wanted to visit. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart already racing. Lisa stood up first. "We're worried about you, Sarah. Really worried. And we need to talk." I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Michael, asking where I was, why my location showed I was home when I'd said I'd be at the grocery store. I ignored it for the first time in weeks. "This is ridiculous," I said, but my voice came out shaky. "I'm fine." Amanda stepped forward. "You're not fine. Mom called you 6 times last week and you answered once. You missed my birthday dinner. You haven't returned my texts in 3 weeks." My mom came out of the kitchen carrying mugs. "Sweetheart, when was the last time you saw your friends? When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" I sat down heavily on the arm of the couch, feeling ambushed and defensive and something else I couldn't quite name. "I've been busy. Michael and I are building a life together. That takes time and energy." Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. "Sarah, do you remember who you were a year ago? You had hobbies. You had friends. You used to paint on weekends. You used to come to book club. You used to laugh." The tears came before I could stop them. I still laugh. But even as I said it, I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed genuinely, the kind of laughter that comes from joy instead of nervousness. My dad finally spoke, his voice quiet and heavy. "I met Michael for coffee last week." I looked up sharply. "You what?" He nodded. "I asked him to meet me. Man to man. I wanted to understand what was happening with you too. And Sarah, the things he said about you, the way he talked about you like you were something he owned, something he had to control." His voice cracked. "That's not love, sweetheart. That's possession." My phone kept buzzing. 5 texts now. 7. 10. "He loves me," I whispered, but the words felt hollow. "He's just been hurt before. He just needs reassurance." Amanda knelt in front of me, taking my hands. "And what about what you need? When was the last time he asked you what you needed?" I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. The room fell silent except for my phone, which had started ringing. Michael's name flashing across the screen like an accusation. Lisa reached over and turned my phone face down. "You don't have to answer that right now." But I did have to answer. Because if I didn't answer, there would be consequences. More questions, more accusations, more exhausting conversations where I had to defend every second of my time. I reached for my phone, but my mom's hand covered mine. "Just sit with us for a minute, Sarah. Just breathe." So I sat there, surrounded by people who loved me without conditions, without surveillance, without demands. And slowly, like ice melting, something inside me began to thaw. It hurt. God, it hurt worse than the numbness had. Because feeling meant acknowledging what I'd lost, what I'd given up, how small I'd allowed myself to become. "I don't know how to leave," I finally admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know who I am without him anymore." Lisa squeezed my hand. "Then maybe it's time to find out." My phone rang again. And this time, for the first time in months, I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail while I sat with my family, while my mom's tea grew cold, while my sister held me as I cried. Outside my window, Portland was turning dark, the city lights flickering on one by one. And somewhere in that darkness, Michael was calling and texting and probably tracking my location, wondering why I wasn't responding, building his narrative about what I must be doing, who I must be with. But for just this 1 hour, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his project or his possession. I was just Sarah. And I'd forgotten how much I'd missed her. I broke up with Michael the next morning. Not in person, because my family convinced me that wasn't safe, not after everything. I called him while Lisa sat next to me on my couch, her hand on my shoulder, anchoring me to reality. His voice was cold when he answered. So you finally decided to call back. Where were you last night? Who were you with? I took a breath. Michael, this isn't working. I can't do this anymore. We're done. Silence. Then a laugh, sharp and disbelieving. You're breaking up with me? After everything I've done for you? After I helped you become a better person? My hands were shaking but my voice stayed steady. You didn't help me become better. You made me smaller. And I'm done shrinking. He tried everything then. Anger first, telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Then bargaining, promising he'd change, he'd go to therapy, he'd be different. Then tears, his voice breaking as he told me he couldn't live without me. I listened to all of it and felt nothing but relief. Goodbye, Michael, I said, and ended the call. Then I blocked his number. Blocked him on every platform. Changed my passwords, every single one. Turned off location services. Each action felt like unlocking a chain I didn't know I'd been wearing. The weeks that followed weren't easy. He showed up at my apartment twice. I didn't answer the door. He sent emails from different accounts. I deleted them without reading. He tried to contact me through mutual acquaintances. I asked them to stop. Slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding. I called Jake and apologized for disappearing. He was understanding, kind even. I reconnected with Chris at the coffee shop, and he welcomed me back like I'd never left. I went to Lisa's book club and remembered what it felt like to have opinions about something other than whether my boyfriend would approve. I started painting again, terrible abstract pieces that made no sense but felt like freedom on canvas. 3 months later, I was at that same Stumptown coffee, the one where I'd run into Ryan, where everything had started unraveling. I ordered my usual oat milk latte and sat by the window, watching Portland wake up. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I replied immediately, easily, without checking to see if anyone was monitoring my messages. Then I opened my contact list and scrolled through all the names that were back now, all the people I'd deleted and then restored. Friends, colleagues, acquaintances. Proof that I existed outside of one person's insecurity. And at the very bottom, still blocked, was Michael's number. I stared at it for a moment, remembering who I'd been when I'd promised to delete everyone for him. Remembering how I'd thought that was love. Then I pressed delete one final time. Not his contact. Mine. The version of me who thought she had to disappear to be loved. She was gone now. And I didn't miss her at all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.